Part 3. The Dragon King. 24 years after Ashford Meadow, on a spring morning that would shatter the world, Aegon Targaryen, fifth of his name, called the Unlikely, stood in the great courtyard of Summerhall and prepared to wake the dragons. The journey from Hedge Knight's squire to the Iron Throne had not been kind. His father Maekar had died at Starpike, struck down in battle. His eldest brother Daeron had choked on a lamprey pie. Aerion, mad, beautiful Aerion, had drunk wildfire thinking it would transform him into a dragon and had burned from the inside out. Aemon had taken the black, refusing the crown with quiet dignity. And so the throne had fallen to Egg, the boy who'd run away to see the world. The prince who'd hidden his identity and learned what it meant to be small. The man who'd spent his youth with Ser Duncan the Tall, traveling the 7 kingdoms and seeing his people suffering with his own eyes. The Unlikely King, they called him. The People's King. But today, he would become something more. Nightwander waited in the center of the courtyard, vast and patient as the mountains. 50 years had done nothing to diminish the dragon's magnificence. If anything, time had made it more terrible, more beautiful. Its scales gleamed like polished midnight, each one the size of a shield. When it breathed, smoke curled from its nostrils thick enough to choke a man. Around the dragon, arranged in a careful circle on beds of coal and kindling, rested 7 eggs. 7 chances, 7 possibilities, 7 potential futures for a realm that had forgotten the sound of dragon wings.
Your Grace!
Ser Duncan the Tall, now Lord Commander of the King's Guard, his white cloak brilliant in the morning sun, approached with heavy steps. Age had turned his brown hair to gray, but he still stood straight and strong.
Are you certain? The Masters say...
The Maesters said dragons were extinct.
Aegon's voice carried the weight of 5 decades, but his eyes, those were still Egg's eyes, bright with impossible hope.
They said magic was dead. They said Nightwander couldn't exist.
He gestured to the dragon, which rumbled in response.
The Maesters have been wrong before.
Duncan's jaw worked.
And if it fails, if the eggs don't wake...
Then they don't wake, but I have to try.
Aegon's hand rested on Nightwander's foreleg, feeling the ancient heat pulsing beneath those scales.
I've spent 20 years on that throne, Dunk. 20 years trying to help the small folk to make the realm better, to be the king they deserve. But there are limits to what a man can do, even a man with a crown.
He looked up at Nightwander, at the creature that had chosen a frightened boy in the woods and changed the course of history.
But a man with dragons can remake the world.
The dragon's eye, molten gold, impossibly deep, fixed on him with that familiar intelligence. The bond between them thrummed like a plucked string, tight and true after half a century together. Aegon felt Nightwander's question without words.
Yes, I'm ready. Are you?
The dragon's answer was a sound like distant thunder, like the promise of storm and fire and rebirth.
Clear the courtyard, everyone back to the walls. Duncan, you too.
Egg.
That's a royal command, Lord Commander.
Duncan's face twisted with worry and old friendship and the weight of 50 years of trust.
I've followed you into madness before. Don't expect me to enjoy watching from the sidelines.
I don't expect you to enjoy it. I expect you to obey.
The King's Guard withdrew. The Maesters retreated, muttering their disapproval. The servants fled, making signs against evil. Within minutes, the courtyard stood empty, save for a king, a dragon, and 7 eggs that had slept for 100 years. Aegon walked among the eggs, touching each one. They were beautiful, red and gold and green and black and white and bronze and cream, with scales that caught the light like jewels. Dead things, silent things, things that should have stayed buried in Dragonstone's depths. But Aegon had never been good at accepting what should be.
Do you remember Ashford?
He asked Nightwander softly.
When I was just a boy who'd run away from his family. You were dying then, chained and hurt and alone. Everyone said dragons were gone. Everyone said magic was dead. But you chose to live. You chose me. And together we proved them all wrong.
Aegon stepped back, giving Nightwander room.
So let's prove them wrong again.
The dragon's roar shook Summerhall to its foundations. Nightwander reared back, wings spreading wide enough to blot out the sun, and opened its jaws. The glow that had always lived in that throat orange and red and gold, suddenly blazed white-hot. The air itself began to scream. Then came the fire. Not the careful, controlled flames Nightwander had learned over decades of bonding with Aegon. Not the precise bursts used to char weapons without killing men. This was dragonfire unleashed, the fury of old Valyria made manifest, the burning heart of magic itself. The stream of white gold flame struck the first egg, and the world exploded into light. Heat washed over Aegon like a physical blow, forcing him to his knees. The stones beneath his feet cracked from the temperature. The air shimmered and danced. He could hear Duncan shouting his name from the walls, could hear maesters screaming, could hear the entire palace holding its breath. But Aegon kept his eyes open, kept watching, kept believing. Nightwander moved to the second egg, the third, the fourth, each one bathed in fire so hot it should have reduced stone to slag, reduced the eggs themselves to ash. The dragon circled the courtyard in a careful pattern, weaving threads of flame like a master craftsman at work, and the eggs began to crack. It started with the red one, a sound like breaking glass, high and clear. Then a chip of shell fell away, revealing something moving inside, something alive. The green egg shuddered, cracked. A tiny claw emerged, black as midnight, tipped with talons already sharp as razors. The gold egg split down the middle with a sound like a bell, and a dragon the color of sunrise tumbled out onto the hot stones, shaking its wings and screeching its first breath.
Gods, it's working!
Nightwander's fire intensified, became a howling inferno that turned the courtyard into a vision of the afterlife. The remaining eggs shattered in rapid succession, black and bronze and cream and white, and from each one came a dragon. 7 eggs, 7 dragons, 7 new voices, joining Nightwander's ancient song. The fire cut off abruptly. Nightwander landed with an earth-shaking crash, smoke pouring from its jaws, eyes bright with triumph. And in the sudden silence, Aegon heard it, the sound of baby dragons calling to each other, chirping and hissing and learning their voices, crawling over the broken shells toward Nightwander, toward the ancient dragon who had given them life, seeking warmth and protection and belonging. Aegon stood on shaking legs and walked into the circle of newborn dragons. They were small, barely the size of cats, but perfect, beautiful, impossible. Their scales gleamed wet in the morning light, colors bright as jewels. When they opened their mouths, tiny wisps of flame escaped. One of them, the red one, bold and fierce already, climbed onto Aegon's boot and looked up at him with eyes like molten copper.
Hello, little one. Welcome to the world.
The dragon chirped and belched a puff of smoke. Behind him, Aegon heard the courtyard filling with sound, Duncan's laughter, rough with emotion, maesters arguing in shocked voices, servants crying out in wonder, and beneath it all, a rising chant from the small folk who'd gathered at the gates. The Dragon King, the Dragon King, the Dragon King. Nightwander rumbled, a sound of deep satisfaction, and curled its massive body around Aegon and the hatchlings, protecting them, claiming them. Aegon looked up at his oldest friend, his truest companion, the dragon that had changed his life half a century ago, in dark woods far from here.
We did it, Nightwander. We brought them back. All of them.
The dragon's eye gleamed with something that might have been pride, might have been love, definitely was power, because this changed everything. For 100 years, the Targaryen dynasty had ruled without dragons, relying on alliances and marriages and careful politics to hold their throne. They'd been strong, yes, but mortal, vulnerable, bound by the same limitations as any other house. Not anymore. 3 months later, Castle Black received a visitor that made even the hardened men of the Night's Watch stop and stare. Maester Aemon Targaryen stood in the courtyard of the ancient fortress, his white hair bright against his black robes. His blind eyes turned toward the sky as if he could still see. And perhaps in his own way he could, because descending from the gray northern clouds came a dragon, not Nightwander. The ancient beast was far too large and far too bonded to Aegon to leave the king's side. But one of the 7, the white one, pale as fresh snow, with eyes like chips of ice and scales that seemed to glow in the dim northern light. The men of the Night's Watch scattered, hands reaching for swords that would be useless against dragonfire. The wildlings beyond the wall would be seeing this too, seeing and understanding that the world had shifted beneath their feet. The dragon landed with surprising grace for something that had grown to the size of a horse in just 3 months. It folded its wings and approached Aemon with careful steps, as if it knew, as if it understood that this man couldn't see. Aemon reached out one weathered hand. The dragon pressed its snout against his palm.
Maester,
A voice called from the walls. Lord Commander Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven himself, descended with his white cloak trailing behind him.
your brother sends interesting gifts.
Not a gift.
Aemon said softly, stroking the dragon's scales. They were warm even in the cold, and he could feel the gentle rumble of contentment.
A tool, a weapon, a promise.
A promise of what?
Aemon's blind eyes seemed to look past Bloodraven, past the wall, past the known world into something darker and colder and infinitely more dangerous.
That when the long night comes again, and it will come, Brynden, the old books are clear. The Night's Watch won't stand alone. That dragons remember their purpose. That fire can hold back the darkness.
The white dragon spread its wings, and even though it was young, even though it was small compared to Nightwander, the heat that radiated from it made the perpetual cold of the wall seem almost manageable.
What will you call it?
Bloodraven asked. Aemon smiled, an expression both sad and hopeful.
Snowfang, for the white wolf in the old stories, for the pale protector that guards against the night.
He paused.
And perhaps, when I'm long dead, and this dragon has grown old and wise in the ways of the wall, perhaps it will find another who needs it, another who was born to ride.
His words hung in the cold air like prophecy. Bloodraven's single red eye narrowed.
You've had a vision.
I'm a dragon dreamer, same as my brother Daeron was, same as our line has always been.
Aemon's hand never stopped moving on Snowfang's scales.
I've dreamed of snow and wolves and a boy with my blood who will stand at the edge of the world when it matters most. I've dreamed of this dragon waiting, watching, keeping the flame alive until...
Until what?
Until it's needed.
Far to the south, in the throne room of the Red Keep, Aegon V sat on the Iron Throne with Nightwander coiled behind him, too large now to fit inside the castle, but present nonetheless in spirit and bond. The 6 remaining dragons were being trained, being bonded to riders, being prepared to change the realm forever. But one dragon had gone north. One dragon guarded the wall. One dragon waited in the frozen darkness for a purpose that wouldn't become clear for nearly 300 years. Duncan, standing at Aegon's side, leaned close and whispered,
You sent Aemon the White One. Why?
Aegon's eyes were distant, seeing something beyond the present moment.
Because some things are meant to be. Because the Night's Watch protects the realm, and they deserve the tools to do it. Because my brother is wise and patient, and will teach that dragon what it needs to know. And because I dreamed it, Dunk, the same way Nightwander found me in those woods, that wasn't chance. That was destiny. That dragon chose me. And Snowfang,
He smiled.
Snowfang has a choice to make too. Just not yet. Not for a long, long time.
You're being cryptic.
I'm being a dragon dreamer. We're allowed to be cryptic.
At Castle Black, Snowfang lifted its head and roared, young and high and fierce, and the sound echoed off the wall like a promise carved in ice and fire. Maester Aemon listened to that sound and smiled. Somewhere in the distant future, a boy would be born at the edge of the world. A boy with wolf's blood and dragon's fire both. A boy who would stand at the junction of everything and face a darkness that had slept for millennia. And when that moment came, when everything hung in the balance, there would be a dragon waiting. A white dragon. A dragon that remembered Snowfang. The thought settled into Aemon's mind with the weight of absolute certainty. He didn't know the boy's name, didn't know when it would happen, didn't know the specifics of the story that would unfold, but he knew this: the dragon dreaming never lied.
Come,
Aemon said to Snowfang, turning toward the stairs that led to the top of the wall.
let me show you your new home. Let me tell you about the duty we keep here, about the watch that never ends.
The dragon followed, leaving footprints of melted snow in its wake. Behind them, the men of the Night's Watch stared in wonder and terror and slowly dawning hope. The realm had changed at Ashford Meadow when a boy touched a dying dragon. It had changed again at Summerhall when a king brought 7 eggs to life, and it would change once more, centuries hence, when a dragon's choice echoed across time and gave a bastard boy the power to save the world. But that story was still waiting to be written. For now, there was only the wall, the cold, the darkness beyond, and a white dragon learning to keep the flame alive.